This week, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take a trip around the world and look at some of the legends that have developed about sleep. I'm Jay, and this is Somnilopod. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This week is going to be a little bit of a departure for us. I usually try to keep things as scientific as possible, but when I was putting together the episode on myths about sleep, I was at a family dinner, and I was talking with my niece, and she asked me what what episode I was working on. And I told her I was looking at myths, and she said, "Oh, you mean like the myth that cats can steal your breath while you're sleeping?" And I thought, that is a different take on what I was looking at. So I thought it would be interesting to have a look around the world and look at some of the legends that that people have developed in order to understand what's happening while we sleep. So I got to thinking about it and thought it might be an interesting episode. Now, when I think about legends regarding sleep, there's one in particular that stands out to me personally. That's the legend of a little old man that comes into the room at night and sprinkles dust or sand into your eyes to cause you to get sleepy. That's the story of the Sandman. Actually originates in Scandinavian folklore, but it didn't really appear in literature until a Hans Christian Andersen story called Old Lukoji. That was the first time that we got to see the Sandman in modern relatively modern literature. There was also a second story. Interestingly, the Hans Christian Andersen story was about a benevolent little person who would help children get to sleep. There was another story in 1816 called Der Sandman that actually tortured these children. In that rendition, the Sandman only visited children that wouldn't go to sleep. And his sand made their eyes fall out, and he would collect their eyeballs and take them back to his iron fortress on the moon and feed them to his demonic children. So if you think that getting a swat on the bottom and being sent to bed was bad, imagine your parents telling you this story when you were a kid. Actually, I think I kind of like that version a little bit better, but it definitely could lead to some nightmares. And speaking of nightmares, this is actually one that we have sort of touched on in the past. In Germanic folklore, there is an evil spirit called the Mara, and the Mara would sit on your chest and constrict your breathing while you were sleeping, and often turn your dreams into nightmares. The English word for Mara is mare, and that's the origin of the word nightmare. Now, the episode that we talked about this in the past was on sleep paralysis. It's a very common description of what people report feeling, is that there is a pressure on their chest, they don't feel that they can breathe, and they often feel that there is an evil presence or at least a dark presence in the room with them. Now, it's not just the Germanic people that have this type of legend. In the Kashmir, there is a legend of the Pasikdar, which is an invisible demon that attacks you at night. And in Turkey, they believe it's a jinn that sits on your chest and actually covers your mouth and causes you to strangle while you're sleeping. It's interesting how different areas can try to come up with an explanation for some of the phenomena that we see, and how they have their different takes on it. Fortunately, it's not all bad. It's not all about somebody stealing your breath or causing nightmares. The Native American tribe, the Ojibwe people, they have a legend of the Spider Woman. Her name is Asibikashi, and she would watch over the Ojibwe people. And every night she would spin a web, and that web would catch the nightmares and only allow the good dreams to pass through to the people. Now, as the Ojibwe people spread out and became more numerous, she was not able to watch over all of them individually, So she taught them how to build their own webs. We know them now as dream catchers, so that the nightmares would be caught in the dream catcher and the good dreams would be the only things that would pass through. So the legend is that as long as you have one of these hanging above your bed, then nightmares should get caught up by that, and you should only have pleasant dreams. Now, speaking of the dream world, we can't really mention it without talking about the Greeks. I'm telling you, they had a very complicated mythos regarding what's happening at night while we're sleeping. Of course, I guess it's easy to sort of personify all of that stuff, and that's exactly what they did. They have an entire pantheon of gods relating to sleep called the Onerai. And the Onerai were actually the children of Hypnos. Hypnos in Greek being the god of sleep. Also in Roman mythology, that Hypnos is called Somnus. So you can sort of see where Somnilopod partly originated, was from the Greek or the Roman god Somnus. However, the children of Hypnos or Somnus are the pantheon that deliver both messages in dreams, those messages being delivered by the god Morpheus, and also nightmares. The nightmares being delivered by his brother Phobator. And Phobator in Greek actually translates as to be feared. So every night he would send out his, either he himself would go out or he would send out his children, who were members of the Onerai, and they would deliver the bad dreams to the people. And it's not just about bad dreams. Fortunately, there is an interesting Japanese legend about the Baku. And the Baku is a dream eater. It's a spirit animal that would visit people in the middle of the night, and it would only eat nightmares. So it would come into the house, take care of those nightmares, and let you have some good dreams. The Baku legend actually began in China and then began to appear more commonly in Japan around the 14th century. It was described as a pig-shaped being with a long snout that would eat all of those pesky nightmares. And there's one set of legends that I wanted to be sure and touch on, because these you hear a lot with regard to different cultures, and that is the legend of the incubus and the succubus. Now, at their root, these are male and female, incubus being the male, female being the succubus, spirits that would have sexual encounters with people at night. Now, we're all adults, most of us, so I imagine that nobody's going to be snickering while we're talking about this, except for me. But people had to come up with some sort of understanding of what could be causing these sexual dreams that would occur at night. I would imagine that some of this grew out of the phenomena of men having an erection during different periods during the night. Typically in REM sleep, men will get an erection. So waking up with an erection, they had to figure out why that was happening. So they came up with the stories of the succubus. And that is not an anthropologically valid explanation. It's just where my brain goes. So the incubus and the succubus actually appear as early as around 2400 BC in Mesopotamia. And they had slightly different names. Lilu was the male spirit demon, and Lilin was the female demon. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, there is a Bible story about Lilith, who was the first wife of Adam. And she was cast out of Eden because she didn't do what Adam wanted her to do. So naturally, she became a succubus herself and gave birth to evil demons throughout the rest of time. The Christian tradition mentions incubi and succubi in other circumstances as well. St. Augustine acknowledged that there were many attacks by these demons on many trustworthy people. Several centuries would pass, and Thomas Aquinas, who did not deny these attacks, also wanted to point out that children could not be born of these attacks because babies can only be born by two humans having sex with each other. So I guess you got a free pass if the demon came and visited you at night. I don't know how that worked for Thomas Aquinas, but I'm sure the Christians figured that out. There is mention of some children born from the male incubus having sex with female. And these creatures would be considered to be supernatural. They were also called Cambion, and often they were the babies that resulted from the male spirit having sex with a female human. And they usually had some sort of physical deformities, and they were considered to have proximity to the supernatural. So, of course, if you were born different, you probably had a parent who was a demon. I'm sorry to have to tell you that. I just find it so interesting, the stories that people develop to try to understand something that they just simply don't have the capacity to be able to figure out at that point. That's where all of these stories originated, just people trying to figure out what was going on. I hope that this has been an interesting episode for you. I hope it has been a little fun departure. I do want you to subscribe and like on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm actually developing a YouTube channel as well, so we will be crossing a platform there. I think that will be an interesting take on some of this stuff as well. So please send me your questions, comments, criticisms. Do you have any legends that I didn't cover that you thought were interesting? Maybe we'll have a part 2 of this if we can get enough information together. So please send that information to me at j@somnilopod.com. You can also, again, send me messages through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And until we talk next time, I hope that you get some rest. Thanks so much.